but organic is about growing health through your food, through your soil. But really learning that Mother Nature knows what to do. It's more important that you don't interrupt Mother Nature as a farmer. Let the systems work. Let the natural systems do what they're meant to do. All I do is I make sure make sure that I address any corrections that need to be made, such as air, water, organic matter, minerals in the soil. But really, the natural functions are working on their own. I just need to be a caretaker, make sure the systems have everything they need.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Lindley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish organic crops grown in healthy soils and organic livestock raised on well-managed pasture. You just heard from Guy Choiniere, one of Vermont's most innovative dairy farmers, according to just about everyone we talked to. Guy and his son Matt spoke to Dave last fall and shared their journey from conventional to organic dairy farming and now onto managing their herd on a 100% grass-fed diet. They also shared plenty of thoughts and solutions for struggling dairies in New England due to pay prices that are well below the cost of production for so many of their friends and neighbors.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast, and I'm talking today with Guy and Matt Choiniere. Do you say that Choiniere or Choiniere?
Choiniere. Choiniere is French pronunciation, and Choiniere is what it's evolved to on this side of the border.
Yeah, I figured it had evolved a little here in America. Okay, Choiniere. These guys are really good dairy farmers in Vermont, and I think some of the best farmers in the Northeast. And you're doing great stuff. I'm really happy to be talking about it today. So Matt told us a little bit of the history. Guy, why don't you tell us, just if you would, a little bit of the history? How did you come to do this?
Dairy farming? Well, being the only boy, I didn't feel I had many choices. So I do have two sisters who were involved in the farm, but I seemed to be the one chosen. I was the youngest and the one expected to take over the farm. So it didn't take me long to realize that I either better decide I'm going to like it or I'm not going to like it. My dad had a heart attack when I was 19. So that was the point where I had to make a choice. My dad said, you don't have to take over the farm, but he said, at this point, so you need to decide to see if we're going to keep the cows or sell the cows. So since 19 years old, my dad let me make decisions and move the farm in a direction that I was seeing was best for the future. And that's where it's been ever since. We've been moving forward with support from my parents. And then I married my wife, Beth, in 1993. And she's been very supportive, supporting the farm every step of the way. And we had two children, Matt and Hannah. We tried to expose them to as many things about farming as we could to make sure when they make their decision, if they want to stay on the farm, that it's based on not just milking cows. And we're real happy that they both picked up many skills working and growing up on a farm. And Matt deciding to stay, my wife and I are ecstatic about that he feels there's a future here for him. And I am looking forward to helping Matt move the farm into different places that I didn't think that I would want to go.
So what year did you take over? Make that decision, okay, I'm going to run this farm?
When I was 19, that was 1985, when my dad had the heart attack.
And this was what would be called a conventional farm at that point?
Very conventional.
Very conventional.
Yes.
Was it that point that you decided that you wanted to do it differently, that you thought there were opportunities?
No. It took me a few years to create enough confidence to make those types of decisions, life-changing decisions, because going to organic was life-changing for us. My dad was very successful in the way he was farming. He was conventional, which just meant that he was producing high-quality feed. He was feeding a lot of grain, He worked with genetics. He made a lot of milk. It's not that he wasn't successful, it's that the market started becoming unstable. The milk market, as we reach years into it, the 1990s, early 90s, I saw that, okay, my parents are relying on me to support their retirement, and do I want to be in a market that I can't predict or rely on? So that's when my wife and I started looking at organic farming and visiting organic farms, going to organic meetings, and really felt the love and the confidence that I was looking for, and the stability.
Yeah, that was still in the relatively pretty early days of organic in America.
It was. I wasn't getting a lot of support from my neighbors because it was so new. They were saying your cows are going to starve, your cows are going to die, you won't be able to treat them. But my instincts were saying, let's go. This is the way I want to farm, and if it's going to work, this is the way it's going to work. So what started out being for financial reasoning, it became more of a life change on how I wanted to raise my family.
And where did you get the information of how to do that? Like, you weren't getting it from Extension at that point.
No, luckily enough, connections with some pioneers in the organic field, like Jack Laser and Lyle Edwards, from North Troy. These guys came to see me and said, because I was going to Horizon meetings, because they were the first ones to reach out to me. After you reach out to the organic market, you sort of get pinpointed by the co-ops. And Horizon did approach me first, so that's all I knew. I was going to their meetings and expecting that I was going to be a Horizon farmer. But Jack Laser and Lyle Edwards caught wind of that, and they said, no, so you are not a Horizon farmer, you're an Organic Valley farmer. So you need to come to our meetings to get and meet us and make sure that before you make a choice that you're exposed to Organic Valley as well. Said, you're definitely an Organic Valley farmer.
So what was the difference between being a Horizon farmer in their mind and an Organic Valley farmer?
It was something about the atmosphere at the meeting. These farmers were working so collectively and working together, and there was I could just tell that they were building off each other and really trying to reach the next level, but together. And I didn't feel that at Horizon. No, it was business as usual. They told us what we're going to get for a pay price. The more you make, the more you can generate for income. But it was a lot more at the Organic Valley meetings. It was about how you treat your animals, how you treat your land, milk quality. It wasn't all about price. Very little bit about price. So I could tell that it was a team approach, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's amazing that when you discover a community or you grow and become part of a community, it makes everything so much easier, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for. I wanted something long-term, not short-term. And again, I wanted to improve our health through our farming, not through our primary doctor, basically. And I knew that if I could prove this through the cows, that I could move that same theory into our household. And that's exactly what we did. We started managing the animals organically, improving the soils, improving the feeds, saw that the vet bills were dropping consistently until we got to the point where, wow, this works. I mean, food can be our health. And so I didn't hesitate to make sure that we changed our ways in the house as well.
For what you were eating.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Matt, you grew up on an organic farm.
I did.
That's different, right? So if Guy was like having a conversion experience with all the terror that involved, you grew up, all right, this is how we do it. This is what the world looks like. Then you went to college, and actually you were the weird guy because they had a different understanding, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, so I guess growing up, I do remember sitting around the table and our parents saying like, hey, we're going to be going organic. This is what it means. This is how things are going to change a little bit. And then as we transitioned. We were finding all the new tools to put in our toolbox, or a lot of it on how to like supplements. So a big one was garlic tincture. That was one of my dad's favorites to treat sick calves with, and it was also the favorite tool to treat sick kids with. Oh, and I was being so young, I wouldn't tell anyone when I didn't feel good, because I did not want to.
No more garlic tincture.
Did not want to, and I didn't eat garlic for years because I thought it just tasted bad. Now I love garlic.
Yeah.
But yeah, the different herbal remedies that we would try in such unpalatable ways. But now, I grew up as a very healthy child.
Yeah.
And that definitely played a big role in learning like proper nutrition, how your diet does affect your health. So when going to college, that was definitely not mainstream. Alternative treatments and kind of like holistic management wasn't necessarily the cool thing in college. I think now more so it is. I think the younger generation of farmers now are really into regenerative agriculture and healing the land. Like the people who are getting into farming now, they're doing it because they feel a higher purpose in it, not necessarily just because they want to make money, because they all know coming into it that that's questionable if they're not going to get rich. But there's a lot of satisfaction in doing the right thing and managing the land the right way. So I think that's what's drawing young kids into agriculture now. Vermont Tech was very open as far as the professors were all supportive of organic agriculture. We didn't necessarily learn a whole lot about organic methods, but they definitely weren't discouraged. We had a local organic farmer right down the road from the school, Brent Beidler, and I got to work for him for a semester. And my parents knew them anyway. So when I transferred schools, we actually went to go see Brent, and I got a job there a couple nights a week.
So it's a whole thing where there starts to be this web.
Exactly.
There are now organic farms all over instead of... you didn't have any organic neighbors, and there aren't too many in the state at that point even.
No, it's a risky move, but what now I can look back and success grows. Success attracts people, and that's exactly what people were seeing, success. My neighbors went by for years just looking, but not giving us any credit, but now they know that our methods can work and do work, just like their methods work, but it's how you prefer to farm, and we choose to farm without a lot of outside input.
So let me ask you, like, to you, what does it mean to be an organic farmer? Because there's tremendous misunderstanding amongst the eaters about what that means, and it kind of has come down to this really simplistic, it means it's not sprayed with pesticides.
Right.
But it's so much more than that.
For me as a farmer, it means not following recommendations. Because starting out as a conventional farmer, we were constantly visited by salespeople trying to sell you product, and then you have your grain, you have your fertilizer, you have your chemical recommendations, and basically that's what you do as a farmer. You follow your recommendations, and then you deal with the veterinary when your cows are sick. But I knew there must have been something better than that. This is where my instincts kicked in. So organic farming to me has really taught me how to work with my instinct, work with what I can do myself on this farm to encourage health. And it's been working really well. And I got to give credit to a lot of the resources that we have through the years that help teach us, through these workshops. But organic is about growing health through your food, through your soil, but really learning that Mother Nature knows what to do. It's more important that you don't interrupt Mother Nature as a farmer. Let the systems work. Let the natural systems do what they're meant to do. All I do is I make sure make sure that I address any corrections that need to be made, such as air, water, organic matter, minerals in the soil. But really, the natural functions are working on their own. I just need to be a caretaker, make sure the systems have everything they need.
I think it takes a lot of discipline to do that, because one of the things I know is that when somebody comes to sell you something, and what they're promising is that your production is going to go up, right? You're going to make more money because your milk production is going to go up. And usually that is true for a little while.
For us, production comes with longevity, and longevity comes with health. So working on the health piece is a lot more important to me than working on the production piece. That will come with longevity, and for us, it's for cows. As their mammary systems mature, these cows aren't peaking, don't even start peaking till they get 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And a lot of farmers don't even get to see their cows reach that. So for me, no, I was able to stay in the business long enough to see that, okay, these cows are amazing. They have amazing potential just naturally if you can get them to stick around healthy and de-stressed and good feet and just all around healthy. And they are paying the bills easily through their production. But my main purpose is to get them to stay on the farm for a long amount of time.
Now, you said most farmers don't ever get a chance to see their cows get that old. Why not? What happens?
Well, the average age of a cow in the conventional world is 4 years old. So they're trying to get all the production out of these younger animals. And they probably are. But overall, I would compare our animals to any of these high-producing conventional cows through a lifespan of production. And so that's where I would compare our animals to any other top producing herds, is a lifetime of production. Now, our cows are living 10, 12 years old, still producing a decent amount of milk. And that all adds up, and that's the direction we're heading. We're going to stick to it.
So it's interesting. Davey said that you talk about your cows like marathon runners. And I talk about my tomato plants a lot as if they were athletes, because that's what they are for me. And you don't want to burn them out. You don't want to exhaust them. Yeah, they can have one great jump and then they hurt themselves.
Exactly. They are. It took me a few years to realize it, but I finally realized that I needed to be an expert nutritionalist feeding them on an all-forage diet, because I'm dealing with Olympic athletes. And when you start looking at the amount of calories they're burning per day, these high-producing lactating animals are very comparable to athletes that do these endurance sports, because that's exactly what a cow is doing. Even though she might not be running up and down the trail, producing milk requires a lot of calories, and you need to be really good as a farmer to meet her energy needs. And I feel we've done a good job, you never stop learning, you never stop trying to improve your system. But I think we're doing a really good job.
So let's talk about what your cows eat. You're grass-fed, right? So what does that mean?
100% grass-fed. It didn't start out that way, though. There's a learning curve. I wouldn't recommend anyone just to cut out, if their cows are used to grain, to just stop cold turkey and go to grain. We slowly wean them off, because as you take away their supplements, you need to be beefing up the rest of your program, your soils program, your forage program. And I didn't rush into it. It took me a good 5, 6 years of challenging that cow. Okay, how much more feed do you want to eat? Okay, what's it going to take for me to get her to eat more? But at the same time, you're improving your quality. So palatability, a lot of things come into play. How much feed can you get into a cow, but how high of a quality can you accomplish out in the field? So there's a few different angles you got to accomplish. And I think we've done a good job just learning how to get the most energy out of the feeds that we feed, and realizing that grass is the highest quality feed you can feed a cow, because you look at the grass, each blade of grass is a solar panel. And if you can catch that blade of grass and allow that cow to eat it directly, there's no better feed than that, because she's getting full utilization of that energy that plant has absorbed. So grazing, there's no better way to feed a cow than letting her eat it direct from the pasture.
And how much of the year, I mean, we're in Vermont, we have a real winter. How much of the year do the cows get to go out and eat grass out in pasture?
We're a little shy of 6 months that we can get a cow to eat on pasture. We're in a cold season zone, and there gets to a point where they're doing more damage than good in the pastures. Now, yeah, they could get a little more grass out of it, but if they're damaging it for the next year, it's time for them to come into these hoop barns and start producing fertilizer for the fall, for the next growing season.
Right.
So you're right. We need to make milk year round. So our harvested feeds needs to be high quality. And we've adopted a few practices that have really worked well. Hay in a day works well. But really feeding the soil so that the biology can really push that grass so that it has the highest energy it can accomplish. But maybe Matt has a good angle on that.
Matt, how do you feed the soil?
Well, healthy soil, it takes air in the soil, it takes enough water. So making sure that we're not overcompacting our soil is number one. So all of our machinery, first of all, we try to run over it with equipment the least amount possible. We have flotation tires on all of our implements. And we try not to have anything super heavy. Like, we don't have huge oversized tractors running over the fields. We don't till because that would break up soil structure.
Sorry, you don't ever till? Are you a no-till farm?
We're a no-till farm. All of our land is in permanent grass. Occasionally, if we have a field that's damaged, we'll just run a power harrow over the top just to make a nice seed bed. Then we'll reseed it. But we do frost seed, mostly clover, to get a good legume stand in there. Diversity is definitely important in any forage system. The more varieties and different species of plants you have in there, kind of the more they can work off each other, and they host different colonies of different fungal networks, different bacterial colonies, and they can all work off each other to improve the health of the soil and the health of the plants. Building organic matter is another big one. First of all, by not tilling, we're not oxidizing any of the organic matter in the soil. So whatever goes in can at least stay there, and we can build. We add a lot of compost made from our bedded packs. That's another source of carbon. Leaving a nice residue layer on the field is another way. The hay rake that we have a merger, and we always leave a good gap between the tines and the ground, so that we're not pulling up any of that thatch layer underneath. A lot of rakes will kind of scuff the ground and get everything, but it also takes away a lot of protection from the soil. So having that little bit of grass that stays on the ground is another good way to build organic matter. And the organic matter, the more organic matter you have, the more nutrient retention you have, and the more water you can hold.
So there was...
I'll just add a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I look at the soil sometimes as a hotel, and how many people can you house in that hotel? Well, picture the soil and the microbes. So our goal is to get as high as a population as we can, and so this bedded pack is an awesome source where the microbes can feed off from, and those microbes are actually what's feeding the grass and the root systems. And so I just picture, okay, how can I just invite more and more of these microbes to populate and to produce energy for this grass? And that seems to work, where the more you feed the soil, the more you build organic matter. It just seems to represent higher energy feeds.
So it becomes a virtuous cycle.
Exactly.
The more microbes, the better everything grows. The better everything grows, the more microbes.
Yeah, people are always looking for nitrogen sources, but the soil can produce its own nitrogen. You just got to get the microbe populations high enough so that it actually starts showing it through the plants.
Yeah,
because they're releasing byproducts. They're digesting organic matter, which is producing humus, and that humus is what the plants just absorb, eat right up.
Yeah. So you milk about 80?
Yeah, we carry about 80 lactating animals.
Yeah, yeah. And how many acres of pasture does it take to feed them for that 6-month period?
Well managed. At least we have 145 acres of pasture, but some of that is for our bred heifers and our replacements. So we're rotating about 100 acres for the milking cows, and that's pushing it. What's that come out to acres per animal? That's a little over an acre.
1.1, yeah.
And you can do it, but it needs to be well managed. It needs to be well fed. We don't just rely on the cow's performance out there as far as mineralizing. We actually will add more nutrients to the pasture even after the cows have gone through. And some people probably wouldn't agree with that, but if you do a really good job with your compost, you can apply that during the growing season. It actually doesn't hinder the palatability of the grass. But these big Holsteins eat a lot of dry matter, and they actually are eating more than they're leaving. And it took me at least 10 years to figure this out, that I'm in a break-even situation with these Holsteins. That, yeah, they're out there, we're rotationally grazing, but when they go out there and eat, they eat a lot of feed, but they're not leaving me as much manure to replace what they took. And I was always breaking even. The pastures were good, but not really. I felt I could do better. So then we started applying this bedded pack manure after the second rotation at about 3 to 5 tons to the acre, which is crazy. But I said, I'm that type of guy that likes to do things at the extreme levels. But it's amazing that we would put that out there. We bought some spreaders that did a real nice job at spreading out the manure, no clumps, really made some ground contact, the manure to ground contact. And it's amazing how it might set you back a little bit on the third rotation where the cows do more picking because of the manure, but at the same time they're really beating it up, pushing it into the dirt. But you wouldn't believe how well we do in the after that point. The fourth, fifth, and those fall grazings are amazing. So it's worth that little bit of setback during early season grazing, but we get amazing yields after that. So we've really adopted that philosophy, and it seems to work really well. And the cows do a good job at working that manure in and punching it right into the soil.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like the magic ingredient here is knowledge and management. If I'm getting it right, you're not bringing in some great amendment from off the farm that's going to suddenly make everything work. You didn't buy a new, bigger tractor. You're actually making a living in a time when most dairy farmers that I talk to are operating at a loss. Every time they ship out the milk, they lose money. I go, oh my God, how do you even stay in business?
Right. We stick to the basics. The basics work, do a really good job. Like I said, I try not to disturb what Mother Nature is trying to do. I just try to fix what the cows might have damaged on their way through. These cows are heavy. They can create some compaction. So we try to make sure we move them timely. We feed the soil after they've gone through. We try to be resilient. Probably our biggest challenge now is climate change. Where you always think you have it figured out, but the weather changes. You get a drought, you get extreme rains. But it's amazing if you can turn your farm into a giant sponge. It protects you from too much rain, and it'll protect you from not enough rain. And it sounds simple, but it works. Just little things like that.
It's simple but complicated. I mean, it's not easy to do.
Discipline. You have to be disciplined and stick to the plan. And usually the weather will come back around. But building resilience is key now, because that's going to be our biggest challenge. I think is going to be water retention and water infiltration and water absorbing, because we don't want to let any water run off this farm. We want to keep it all. So that's our goal moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. So I read Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma again not too long ago. He does an amazing job of sort of describing how we got into such a mess in agriculture. And one of the things he talks a lot about is with grazing animals, and he explains that the first bite, you want the cow to eat the first bite, and you don't want the cow to eat the second bite of the grass, because then you take it down so low that you've kind of broken up the photosynthetic capacity of it, and the roots die back. It takes a long time to recover. Did I describe that reasonably well?
Basically, yep. I think it's a cow is good for so many bites before she gets tired, wants to go take a drink and lay down. So it's very important for the farmer to set their paddocks up so that there's enough feed out there for 200 bites for all his cows. If you want to use a figure, I'm using 200. But it's much more profitable to the farmer if he lets the cow eat 200 big bites. If the grass is already too short, when the cows get out there, they're going to take 200 little bites, and that's going to result in less milk production. And it's going to stress your pastures out. So it's really important. It's all part of the management. Make sure you have plenty of feed out there. And if you're in a position where you don't have enough feed out there, then that's where you could supplement. Because it's more important for you to make sure that cow doesn't stretch your grass out, because it's going to set you back for the rest of the year. We manage our pastures as importantly for the grass and roots to recover as we do for the cows to go in there and get plenty of feed. So that's where the round bales come in for us. We'll supplement a little bit and realize, okay, yeah, I can send them out there, but if they're going to do more damage than good, I might as well, supplement them, fill them up a little bit before they go out, and then they won't be quite so hungry and won't stress the grass out so much.
Yeah.
And I think a new way that we can kind of look at ourselves as farmers is we're really just land farmers, and the cows are a tool for us to manage the land. But the land is the most important thing. The land comes first, and then it's how we can best manage the land with the animals, using the animals. And I think that's where we get.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of farmers are having a hard time matching the amount of land they have with the amount of animals they have. They're being forced to carry more animals to make more milk, to generate enough revenue to pay the bills. But yet, if they look at their land base, they didn't increase at the same rate. So I think that's where the spiral eventually starts going backwards, and especially now with the environmentalists cracking down on some of these water quality regulations, that being overpopulated on our farms isn't going to be cool anymore.
So what you're describing is a sustainable, regenerative system that could go on forever. I mean, the land just keeps getting more fertile, the cows keep getting healthier, you keep getting healthier, and yet the whole system seems to be pushing dairy farmers, more and more dairy farmers, into doing it wrong. And they go, well, I can't stay alive unless I put more cows on the pasture. And of course, what you're saying is, yeah, well, in 5 years, that's not going to work out either.
I think we have special interests influencing us in the outside world, and trying to get the farmers to do things, or incentivizing the farmers to do things that they probably wouldn't normally do. A lot of farmers have gone to row crops because they're being incentivized. Grazing, as far as the grazing world, I think we need to make sure we adopt a theory that sick land equals sick food. And I think if people can start realizing that and sourcing the food that's coming from our healthier soils, then that'll help the methods that we want to continue in the future for farming. But I know Matt's he's good for this. I'll let him comment on that.
Well, I think you need the farmers need to be getting paid enough to do things right. Like, it's always easier to cut corners, and when any farmer doesn't make enough money to even when they're operating below the cost of production, like they're not going to spend the extra money to make more buffers along their fields because they need all that land, or they need more animals to pay their bills, but they don't necessarily have the land enough land to spread the nutrients on. So giving the farmers a fair pay price, I think, would be a good way to start being able to see some of these positive changes, because a lot of farmers want to do things the right way, but it's a question of market access and having enough money or getting paid enough money for what you're making to actually do things the right way. And I think if we pay the farmers enough, then they will.
So we got a situation right now in Vermont where 10% of the organic dairies just got notified by Horizon that they got a year, and then they lose their contracts. And most of them, unless something amazing happens, aren't going to find anybody to pick those up. I don't think Organic Valley can pick them up. So what happened? How is it that the world doesn't want good organic milk coming from pasture-fed animals?
Well, I think these farmers were part of a business that is corporate owned, and it was a business decision. It wasn't an ethical decision. And you got to wonder, how hard should we be working to get these farmers back on board with Horizon if they don't have their best interests at heart? We're lucky we're with Organic Valley. It's a farmer-owned co-op. We're all looking out for each other. And that's the difference between these two companies. These farmers 10 years ago would have had a spot easily with other co-ops because there wasn't such a surplus of milk. Right now, there's so much milk on the market, they're going to have a hard time finding a spot with other co-ops or handlers. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to somehow incentivize these farmers and try to turn them into a model farm that we're looking for in the future. Help these farmers turn their farms into regenerative, self-sustaining farms that feed local people, and try to turn their product into a niche product, and then create markets such as through the schools and through our hospitals as the healthiest food that you can get. Because I think that's the future for farmers, is that it's going to be a healing. Our food is going to become our health and our healing. And maybe this is an opportunity for these farms, but also for us to work through these farms to create a model that can actually heal people, show that we can heal people through our food.
I was interviewing Earl Ransom for this symposium too, Stratford Creamery, and he said, one of the things that's happened is a lot of dairy farmers are very disconnected from the people who drink their milk. And some of them forget that they're making milk for people to eat. If they're making milk for the processor, there's so many steps in the chain that there's no connection between the farmer and the eater in the end. For dairy, it's easier for vegetables, but I see it's really a challenge for dairy. You guys seem to be still very connected to the fact that what you're doing matters to people.
Well, I think Organic Valley, again, to give them credit, they do a really good job keeping the farmers in touch with the employees, in touch with the consumers. Us personally, we've had tons of opportunities to connect with different consumers at different farmer events, at different, they host events before COVID, where they bring public onto different farms across the U.S. There's also programs to get farmers into the school system, into politics, and it's really about, for one, showing the people who's growing their food, but also I think it's good for the farmer to see who's buying their food. Like, who am I making this for? And I think they've done a really good job at kind of giving us a mission to make the best possible food for these people, and I think the people really appreciate it. All of our customers, if you look at any interaction between Organic Valley customers and their farmers, a lot of times they look at the farmers as total rock stars. Like they're so excited to meet one of the farmers who's making the milk that's going into their yogurt or into their cheese or into their milk. So it's good to have that connection.
And we have a farm store. We've had a farm store for like 10 years, and we get a lot of feedback, and we get a lot of people who come back and say, wow, said we were never able to drink milk before, but now we can, because we feel really good about how you treat your cows, or or your pigs and your chickens. But we get a lot of feedback, so we know that it matters, but we just need to take the time to communicate with our consumers.
Yeah, it's the challenge here. And one of the things I've seen is a lot of farmers, actually, they're kind of solitary people. They're a little bit introverted, and some of them, that's why they got into farming, because they like being with cows, they like being out in the field by themselves, and it's a different skill set to run a bottling plant and then sell your milk to people. It's a challenge that we face.
People probably don't realize it, but it's I get anxiety every time I see when I see people, because you're right, I'm that type of guy that I grew up just working with the animals, not with the public, but I know the effort makes a difference, and that's why I do it. But it's not that it's easy for me to go out in the public and publicly speak and doing webinars and things like that, but I can see that people appreciate it, and it's worth it.
Yeah, I can share the sickening feeling in your stomach before you have to talk to a group of people. So I still have that dread.
I know, and I see Matt, he does such a good job with it, but they taught him that in school, how to public speak, and it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Well, I was also from a young age, when he was doing tours from the get-go, and I'd always be kind of in the back watching, then he'd be like, Matt, what do you have to say? I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was going to speak. So I kind of get used to it through that too. So
yeah, that's good.
Just getting to be around it, and everyone, they're all just people. Like, it's no different than having a conversation. Having a conversation with a lot of people at once is a little more intimidating, but I've been lucky enough through the farm, I've had a lot of opportunities just to interact with tons of people, and when you're telling your own story, it's really easy. If you ask me to go or any of us to talk about something we don't know, then it would be a lot harder, but we're passionate about it and we talk about it all day long anyway. So just talking to a different person about it can kind of it comes more naturally.
So that's an important part about what a real education is. And, it's always somewhat technical, but there's a lot of other stuff about people skills and all the things they call soft skills, which is how we thrive. So I have a question. You said, and the world is sort of awash in milk now. America's awash in milk. There's a lot of milk, and that's what makes it cheap. I'm trying to figure out why there's a lot of milk. All I've seen is, I think 10% of the organic dairy farmers in Vermont have gone out of business in the last 10 years. California's lost half of their organic dairy farms in the last 10 years. Where's all this milk coming from that we're awash in?
Well, I think milk, first of all, dairy itself has lost its place on the food pyramid. It's lost its place at the bottom of the base as a staple food. It used to be a staple food. Now it's considered restricted or regulated because it can create heart disease if you drink too much or eat too much. So that's the first thing. If I saw that, if I believed that, I probably would do the same thing. But they need to realize that it depends on how the cow is fed. It's very important to know how your cow is fed, because she will give you everything. She'll give you all the best that she has to give, but she'll also give you the worst. So if you're feeding her hormones, she's going to give you hormones in her milk. If you're feeding her a lot of grain, you're going to change the fat profile in her milk. Now, you really need to know, and that's why we switched to grass, because we learned that a grass-fed cow will give you the perfect ratio in her milk between omega-3 and omega-6. And that's a real big part of preventing heart disease, is keeping your omega-6 in balance with your omega-3. My dad had a heart attack when I was 19. And they say it's hereditary. Well, I eat at least 3 to 4 eggs a day, and I drink a ton of milk as well. And I run quite often, just as a gauge, because I said, I'll know when I start getting some heart disease, because I won't be able to run like I did when I was 30 years old. But I'm running as fast and as far as I did when I was 30, and I'm 56 years old. So to myself, I had to prove it to myself before I can preach it to other people, that these grass-fed animals are giving you a perfect diet with their milk. So there's probably a surplus because people are just insecure about what they can eat and what they can't eat.
Well, I think there is a growing insecurity about all our food.
Yeah.
And it's appropriate.
Yeah.
They ought to be insecure.
Yeah.
We're seeing that the nutrient content of basic foodstuffs has consistently gone down from 1940 when the USDA started testing. A potato now is not a potato. From 1940, a carrot is not a carrot. Everything's changed. And I'm sure a quart of milk is not a quart of milk. Maybe your milk is, but not the typical one on the shelf. But even so, with all that concern, actually milk sales have gone up. I was tracking, and it's like it keeps growing. Organic milk sales have gone up, and yet we're drowning in milk. So where's that milk coming from?
I think a lot of it's also like we have farms going out of business, but the land and the animals aren't really going out of dairy production. They're just changing hands.
Yeah.
So I think farm consolidation is definitely one where you see the average size of the farm that's just going up, but the number of farms is going down.
Yeah.
So fewer farms are just making more milk, and the big farms are making a ton of milk. So it's not just 100 farms here and there making with 50, 60 cows. It's a few dozen farms with thousands of cows that are kind of producing all the milk.
And these organic cows, there's some good organic farmers out there. They started out conventionally, and that is an advantage to be conventional once in your life, because you can learn methods that, how to feed a cow, how to get high quality feeds out of your soil. There are some of those you can carry over to your organic practice as well. And I would have never thought that we would make as much milk today as we were when we were conventional. When we switched to organic farming, our cows didn't drop a bit, but I was still feeding organic grain at the time. So the feed didn't change really, but I was still balancing their ration with the grain. But then the biggest challenge was when I switched to grass-fed. That's where I knew the program had to really jump up as far. And where did they have to jump it? They had to jump up in soil quality. I had to make sure the competition in the feed bunk was relieved, or in the pasture. They had to have more room to make sure they could eat more. So things had to change, but we're actually making as much milk today as we were when we were conventional.
As much milk per cow?
Per cow.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And you wouldn't think that. I was never told that would happen, but it can happen.
Yeah. Well, that's taking it to another level. That's, really, of course it makes sense to me. It always makes sense to me that a natural system should thrive. But there's a lot of learning that has to go into that to get to that level.
A lot of learning. But I don't know if I think the consumption people don't eat, the family doesn't eat around the table like they used to. And that's where we used to drink a lot of milk, is around the table with the kids and with the family. And then your kids see that, and you train your kids that they'll do the same when they have their families. But it's been a couple of generations now, we eat on the run. And when you're eating on the run, milk doesn't travel well. So I think we could help ourselves a little more if society would just slow down and eat as a family, and make sure they have their gallon of milk in front of them and know where it came from, know your farmer. And I think that would help us out.
I had to eat on the run today coming here, but I had a bowl of Butterworks yogurt for lunch.
There you go.
You know, and a little maple syrup in there, and some blueberries I picked in Vermont and froze. So it was very good.
You can't beat that.
No, it was very good. It's about what I eat every day for lunch. So it was on the run, but it was the same thing. So I'm curious about the grass-fed market. Somebody was telling me that Aurora has a grass-fed dairy in Texas, and I think it was 4,000 cows, maybe 3,000. I think it was 4,000 cows at this grass-fed dairy, and it was a little over, about the same ratio you have, of a little over an acre per cow, except it's in the middle of the desert. And I thought, I wonder how that works. And you know, I was curious. I know Horizon also has a grass-fed label, and they told me, Danone told me that that's actually only for dairy farms, although you can get it all over the country. So they must be pretty big dairy farms.
It's amazing how they could find rulings to get away with anything. I don't know. You know, I'm not an inspector, but I would expect, you know, when we try to do everything right. So when we say it's 100% grass-fed and 60% of the diet comes from grass, that's exactly what happens on this farm. So I would hope that either their inspector, the USDA, would follow up with these guys and make sure that if they're being certified as grass-fed, that it's actually, but they need to say 100% grass-fed. And I know that's real important.
Now, you just said it's 100% grass-fed, 60% comes from pasture, and the rest would be like hay.
You can supplement with hay, harvested feeds.
Yeah.
Harvested hay.
Okay.
Grass or legumes or.
Green chop.
Yeah, green chop.
Yeah.
So maybe they're bypassing some rules by doing, you know, some grass through harvested feeds. But for us, it's 60% of their dry matter needs to come from pasture, minimum. We're running 80%, but the minimum is 60%. Yeah. So I don't know if they're getting away with it. I don't think it's right. Yeah. So that goes to show that not all food is equal, and people just need to get educated on where their food is coming from, and like I said, know your farmer.
Yeah.
And they need to start using their gut instinct. Consumers need to start using their guts as well as the same way we have, and feel good about where their food is coming from. Because if you feel good about where your food's coming from, it's going to taste a lot better.
Yeah. Of course, that's one of the goals of the Real Organic Project, which is, can we connect farmers like you who care with eaters who care? I'm convinced that there are millions of people in America who want to buy your milk, and they don't know how. They go to the store, they do their best. They're confronted with a barrage of labels that all seem to be saying the same thing. So how do they tell which is which?
Oh boy. I always tell people, if you can buy direct, that's your first choice. Because you'll be able to meet your farmer. And the reason they're coming here on a tour, because I'm trying to instill instinct in these people, what they should be looking for, what questions to ask, what they want to be hearing if the farmer's explaining, you know, about their food. But if they don't happen to have access to any local farmers, then that's where you look for certified organic, because you're going to pay more, but there's a lot of people working under that label trying to make sure you're going to get the best food, you know, that you can. You're going to get what you think you're buying. That's what I try to tell people. It's very hard for you to know a farmer that's 1,000 miles away, so you're taking a chance. But if they realize that not all food is equal, you know, that cow will give you, you know, depending on what she eats, she's going to have a different profile in her milk. And people just need to realize that and really research where their food is coming from.
Yeah. You have a thought on that, Matt?
Local is always better. Knowing your farmer is always the best. But if not, do your best research that you can. Find a brand that you feel good about and stick to that.
With social media, they should be able to get answers to their questions. You know, if a consumer has a question.
It seems like part of our challenge is, and I don't mean them, it's all of our challenge, is to better understand I know, geez, I've learned so much. I've been an organic farmer all my life, but I've learned so much about what organic farming really means in the last 7-8 years, because I had to really ask questions, and people come to me and say, well, why can't hydroponic be organic if they're using approved inputs? I go, no, it's got to be soil. Why? Well, I didn't have a brilliant answer for that. I had some feeling. I had a gut feeling, but I have a pretty good answer now. There is a lot of curiosity and interest out there. We need to help people develop a little, be more fluent in their understanding of biological agriculture.
Marketing makes it hard because every marketing department tries to paint the same picture in your head. Regardless of what product they're selling, they're all trying to make it sound like the best. So that's the real challenge that's going to be. Even well-educated consumers, once marketing teams find out what exactly those educated consumers want to hear, they're going to tell them what they want to hear no matter what. So that's I think going to be the challenge, the next challenge.
Yeah.
Everybody's very good at marketing today.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, you can have the best product in the world, but if you're not good at marketing your product, you're going to be on the bottom shelf. You're not going to move a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The one with the fanciest package and the keywords on it is the one that's going to probably be looked at the most. So we need to somehow overcome that. Not overcome it, but work with that.
It's tough. I mean, it's a true challenge. I see that the food distribution system, the way that we're selling into stores, is becoming more and more vertically integrated. I used to sell to 4 outlets that are now owned by one Dutch multinational. I mean, major supermarket chains. Now they're all basically one chain. They all have different names. Hannaford, Stop and Shop, Fresh Direct. You go in, they go, oh, there are all these different stores to choose from. They're really all one store. And it's, Whole Foods is owned by Amazon. It's very confusing for a small producer. How do you penetrate that? Because it gets harder and harder to get into the shelves. It's working well for you right now with Organic Valley. Although I know that they've had their challenges too,
It takes about 800 employees for them to be able to do what they do. So they have to work hard at it. And they're doing the best they can, but again, they're trying to fight fight to do the right thing, which is a lot harder than trying to fight to do the most profitable thing at all costs. So they've done very well with the mission that they've had in mind. But I definitely think developing local cooperatives to sell to our local customers is probably the way to go for the future. If we can have local aggregation centers and local food co-ops where you can be like, hey, or the people of the community can see oh, so-and-so from down the road grew these apples, and so-and-so grew these tomatoes, and the communities can feed each other and then export their surplus. But I think the main goal of any community should be to feed its people first, and keeping all that income within the community rather than exporting all of your food dollars to multinationals, I think is the way to go.
I think that in the future it'd be nice if there could be some flexibility with the co-ops, because on this farm, it's nice to have a wholesale market, but it's also nice to have a retail market, and that's what our store is. And having that flexibility, we have local people that will support us, but no way can they eat all of our product. But to move product through the wholesale market is where you pay your bills, but your profit comes from the retail. So it'd be nice to have the flexibility where the co-ops can work with the farms, and the farms will work with the co-ops, but allow us to move some more product locally and feed our local people. And then as that grows or it gets more popular, then we'll see where the future goes. But the co-ops are, Organic Valley is doing a great job, but we don't know what the next 5 or 10 years is going to bring.
Yeah. Organic as a movement is strong. Organic as a brand is struggling right now. I mean, it's not struggling. The sales are growing, but what it means is struggling. Right? We see that things are getting sold as organic that I wouldn't call organic. I don't think you'd call organic.
Yeah. Organic has worked really well, but maybe it's time to build off from the organic. And like Matt was saying, we need to work on regenerative. No, we have a bigger issue here with climate change, that it's not all about people's health, it's about world health or the earth health. So I think organic, along with regenerative, along with building resiliency, along with diversification, that all needs to be that future model that I mentioned about those horizon farmers. They could become a future model. Well, it needs to build off from being a good organic farmer, but as well building these carbon sinks that can start, clearing up some of that legacy carbon and really working on carbon cycling and trying to heal the world that way.
I agree with everything you just said, except I think you just described real organic, which is just what organic was. It's the new brand organic that has wandered. I agree that when Albert Howard and all them said, we need to describe a different kind of agriculture from where the conventional is going, that they didn't imagine climate change. And that is a new thing, except everything I see about the way that we can deal with that is what you're already doing in order to create the health in your animals and the health, in the people who drink your milk. It's all right there, I think. It's what real organic is.
Absolutely. Right on target, I guess. And we've adopted the thought that climate change is real, and that's why we are on board with Real Organic Project to support their movement, and we want to be good role models for them, and we'll continue doing what we do, and I'm sure Matt will too.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you very much, guys. I know that you got a lot of work to do, so I really appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. We hope that you will subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a rating and review so that others can find us. A video version of this interview is found at realorganicproject.org/episode 89. Please join us next time when our guest is Gary Hirschberg, the co-founder of Stonyfield Yogurt, and more recently, the founder of the Northeast Organic Family Farm Partnership. This is an effort to help market New England dairy after Horizon announced they were exiting the region over a year ago. To support this podcast and our certified farms, become a recurring donor at realorganicproject.org and get the benefits of being a real friend, including our book club, where you can ask many of our favorite authors your questions. Our next guest is Liz Carlisle tomorrow. She's the author of Healing Grounds, Lentil Underground, and Grain by Grain with previous guest Bob Quinn. I hope to see you there.